Ch.20, shortened distance, adrift in sandstorms. Even though its rogue records and rumors you read, the kingdom of Banyu certainly exists, Xie Lian spoke up. Oh yeah. San Lang hummed. Just then, Nanfeng completed the array on the ground and called out to the others in the room. It's done. When shall we go? Xie Lian quickly packed a small bag and came to the door. Let's go now. He placed his hand on the door and recited, by the heaven official's blessings, no paths are bound. Then gently pushed. When the door was pushed open, it was no longer a small hillside village outside. What replaced it now was a wide city avenue. As wide as the streets were, there was barely anyone on the road, maybe 1 or 2 pedestrians every now and then. This wasn't because it was late in the evening, but because the population in the far northwest was already small, on top of being this close to the Gobi Desert. Even in broad daylight there wouldn't be many walking about. Xie Lian closed the door behind him, and it was no longer Puchi Shrine on the inside, but a small inn. This one step certainly was over thousands of miles, the miracle of the distance-shortening array. A couple of pedestrians walked by, staring at them and whispering to themselves, appearing quite guarded. San Lang spoke up from behind Xie Lian. According to historical records, when the moon sinks in the sky, follow the North Star and you will come upon the kingdom of Banyu. Gege, look, San Lang pointed to the sky. There's the Polaris. Xie Lian looked up and smiled. It's so bright. San Lang stepped closer to stand beside Xie Lian, took a glance at him, then looked up too. Yeah. It seems the night sky in the northwest is somehow more vast than the Midlands. Xie Lian agreed, and the two became immersed in a discussion on stars and night skies. Meanwhile, the 2 junior officials behind them watched on in disbelief. Nanfeng questioned, why is he here too? The door you created looked so magical, I followed along to check it out, San Lang replied innocently. Check it out! Exclamation mark. Do you think this is a tour? Exclamation mark. Nanfeng shouted angrily. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead and said, let it go. Since he's here, he's here. He won't eat your rations, I should have enough. San Lang, stay close to me, don't get lost. Okay, San Lang responded, looking obedient and good. This isn't a question of rations. Xie Lian sighed. Nanfeng, please keep it down. It's the middle of the night, everyone is sleeping. Let's just focus on the task at hand and stop sweating the small stuff. Let's go, let's go. Ellipsis. The 4 followed the North Star and traveled northward. After walking non-stop for an entire night, the towns and greenery along the way became more and more sparse, and the ground slowly gave way to sand. Finally, they reached the Gobi Desert. Although the distance-shortening array could cross over thousands of miles in one step, it used an exhaustive amount of power. The further one went, the more power it sapped, and the time it took to restore power also lengthened. This one step Nanfeng helped them take would require at least several hours to recover from. To conserve strength in case of unforeseen battle, Xie Lian decided not to have Fu Yao perform the same conjuring. For a journey such as this, someone must have their powers at full strength. In desert climate, the difference between night and day was extreme. The nights were freezing to the bone. But not too bad, but when it became day, it was another story. The sky was clear and cloudless, giving way to a scorching sun. It was as if they were walking in a steaming oven, cooking them alive from the ground. Xie Lian led the way, using the direction of the wind and small vegetation growing under boulders to find their path. After a while, he looked back, worried that someone may not be able to keep up. Nan Fen and Fu Yao were obviously fine, immortal and all. Seeing San Lang, though, made him laugh. Under the blazing sun, the youth had peeled off his outer red tunic and was using it to lazily block off the sun, looking tired and cranky. His skin was pearl white, his hair coal black, and with the red tunic covering his face, his features seemed even more accentuated. Xie Lian removed his bamboo hat and put it on San Lang's head. "Here, I'll lend it to you." Surprised, San Lang laughed and said, "It's all right," and returned the hat to him. Xie Lian didn't argue. If the boy didn't need it, there was no need to push. "Let me know if you need it then." Xie Lian straightened the hat on his head and continued walking. After a while, the group noticed a small gray building in the midst of all the sand. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be an abandoned inn. Xie Lian looked to the sky, seeing that it was just past noon and time for the worst of the heat. They had walked all night, it was time for a break. Xie Lian led the group inside, and they found a table to sit at and settle. From his bag, Xie Lian took out a water bottle and handed it to San Lang. "Do you want some?" San Lang nodded. He reached for the water bottle and drank from it before Xie Lian took it back to drink himself. He gulped down the cool water, his Adam's apple rolling up and down, feeling incredibly refreshed and energized. Next to him, San Lang had his arm propping up his chin, stealing glances at Xie Lian drank. A moment later, he asked, "Is there any more?" Xie Lian wiped away the bit of water that was caught on his moistened lips, then nodded and passed over the water bottle again. San Lang was about to reach for it when another hand blocked him from the water bottle in Xie Lian's grip. "Hold on," Fu Yao said. He retrieved his own water bottle from his sack and put it on the table, pushing it towards San Lang. "I have one too." Xie Lian immediately knew what he was planning. Knowing Fu Yao's personality, there was no way he would ever share his water bottle. He and Nan Feng were talking about testing San Lang the night before, so the liquid in the bottle must be unmasking water. If a normal human was to drink a potion such as this, then nothing would happen. However, if they were anything but human, the unmasking water would force its drinker to reveal their true form. Since Nan Feng and Fu Yao wanted to test to see if this youth was a supreme, then the effects of this potion must be considerable. San Lang smiled. "Gege and I can share one bottle, it's fine." Fu Yao and Nan Feng eyed Xie Lian, and Xie Lian thought, "What are you both staring at me for?" Fu Yao said coldly, "His is almost empty, no need to be so polite." "Really? Then you two drink first, don't worry about me," San Lang declined. Those two both fell silent. A moment later, Fu Yao tried again, "You're a guest, you go first." Fu Yao sounded polite and well-mannered, but Xie Lian thought he must have squeezed those words out from between his teeth. San Lang also made a gesture of welcome. You two are followers of the host, please drink first, otherwise it'd be indecent of me. Xie Lian watched the three of them play the silly game of false pleasantries and pitied the sad water bottle. Being roughly pushed around the table, he shook his head. He could feel the poor table tremble from their power play and feared it may not have long to live. Finally, Fu Yao snapped and sneered, "You not accepting this water means you have a guilty conscience." San Lang replied with a smile, "You're unfriendly and refused to drink first. Who knows if you've poisoned the water? Maybe you're the ones with the guilty conscience." Fu Yao pointed at Xie Lian. "You can very well ask him whether this water is poisoned." "Is this water poisoned, Gege?" San Lang turned to Xie Lian. It was quite the cunning question. Technically, the unmasking water was a potion that exposed one's true form and didn't harm real people. Xie Lian replied slowly, "It's not poisoned, but..." Fu Yao and Nan Feng focused the glare on San Lang, and he surprisingly let go of his grip on the bottle. "All right." San Lang grabbed the bottle and shook it playfully in his hand. "If Gege says it's okay, then there's no problem." He gulped down the contents of the bottle in one go. Xie Lian didn't think he'd be so straightforward and was shocked. Nan Feng and Fu Yao were stunned too and tensed immediately. Yet who knew, after San Lang drank all of that unmasking water, he shook the bottle again, then threw it over his shoulder where it crashed and shattered. "Tastes bad." Shock flashed across Fu Yao's face when he saw the unmasking water did nothing to San Lang. A moment later, he said impassively, "It's only water, what difference is there?" San Lang reached for the water bottle next to Xie Lian's elbow again and replied, "Of course it's different. This one tastes much better." Xie Lian chuckled. San Lang really didn't care for any challenges going his way, nor did he care about his true identity, so other than entertainment, this fight was meaningless. Xie Lian thought that this would be the end of it at first, but Nan Feng stood up and dropped a sword onto the table with a loud clang. With such a strong battle aura surrounding him, at first Xie Lian thought Nan Feng intended to end San Lang for good and was speechless for a moment. "What are you doing? The road ahead is dangerous," Nan Feng stated in a low voice. "This is a gift for the little buddy, for self-defense." The sheath of the sword was ancient in design and bore wear and tear from the ages. It was no ordinary sword. Xie Lian's eyes widened in recognition, put his hand over his forehead and turned away. He muttered to himself, "It's Hongjing." 26. The name of this sword was indeed Hongjing. This sword was a sacred sword. While it could not fight evil, no evil could escape its spiritual mirror. Should any non-human entities pull it from its sheath, the blade would turn red as if covered in blood, and the crimson blade would reflect the true form of that which unsheathed it. Whether you were savage or supreme, none shall escape. There were no young men who would not be interested in swords or horses, so San Lang appeared rather excited. "Ooh, let me see." Sheath in one hand, hilt in the other, San Lang pulled at the sword. Nan Feng and Fu Yao stared intently. But when merely 3 inches of the sword was pulled out, San Lang laughed. "Gege, are your servants playing a joke on me?" Xie Lian cleared his throat and turned back around. "San Lang, I already said they're not servants." Then He turned around again. Who's joking around with you? Nan Feng said coldly. How can one self-defend with a broken sword? Stan Lang sheathed the sword and threw it back onto the table. Nan Feng's face froze for a moment, then he immediately picked up the sword to check. He pulled it out of the sheath and heard a clunk, and suddenly, in his hand was now a sharp and chilling, broken sword. Hongjing was broken from 3 inches down. Nan Feng's face changed colors and he turned the sheath upside down. There was the clattering sound of a mess of clinks and clanks. What was left of the blade within the sheath was now broken into bright and sharp little fragments. The Hongjing sword was a powerful weapon that could expose its enemies. That wasn't a lie. But Nan Feng had never heard of any technique that could break it from within the sheath. Nan Feng and Fu Yao both pointed at Stan Lang and cried, "You!" Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Stan Lang snickered and threw himself back into his chair, pushed back and put his feet up on the table. Then tossed one of the broken pieces in his hand in the air to play. I'm sure you guys didn't do this on purpose, and just weren't careful enough with it on the road. Don't worry about me, I don't need some broken sword as protection. Keep it for yourselves. As for Xie Lian, he simply couldn't look at Hongjing directly. The sacred sword used to be part of the collection of Zhang Wu, the martial heavenly emperor. During his first ascension, Xie Lian once visited Zhang Wu's palace and thought despite its lack of combat power, Hongjing was an interesting sword, so Zhang Wu gifted it to him. After the first banishment, there was a time when things had gotten really hard, and Xie Lian gave the sword to Feng Xin to be pawned. That's right. Pawn. Money made from pawning Hongjing was enough to fill their stomachs for a number of meals. Xie Lian had pawned off too many treasures during that time, and he had forced himself to forget every single one of them, lest his heart bled with regret. Feng Xin remembered the sword after his ascension and couldn't bear having a sacred sword lost amongst mortals, so he found it again. It was sharpened, cleaned, and hung in the palace of Nanyang, and now it was brought down by Nan Feng. In any case, whenever Xie Lian saw that sword, he'd feel a dull pain, and could only look away. He could sense that the other 3 were about to start bickering again and shook his head instead. Carefully observing the weather outside. The wind was picking up, Xie Lian noted. There might be a sandstorm later on. Should they continue on? Would they be able to find shelter? Just then, over the golden sand, 2 shadows suddenly flashed by. Xie Lian straightened up immediately. 2 silhouettes, one black, one white, strolled unhurriedly but rapidly, as if they were gliding through clouds. The one dressed in black was slender and elegant, the one dressed in white, on the other hand, was a female cultivator, a sword on her back and a whisk in hand. As they sped by the abandoned inn, the black figure never looked back once, but the white figure glanced over and smiled in that flash of a moment. It was forebodingly creepy. It was only because Xie Lian had been keeping an eye on the outside that he caught that scene, but the other 3 probably only saw their retreating backs. Nan Feng stopped his bickering instantly and rose. Who was that? Don't know, but they're not ordinary people, Xie Lian replied and stood up too. The wind is picking up. Stop playing around, and let's go as far as we can. Although the bickering trio constantly argued, they had nevertheless steeled their hearts to do what they came out to do. So, they immediately cleaned up the pieces of Hongjing before heading out the door. The four of them continued their trek, now against a blowing headwind. They walked for another 4 hours, wind howling in their ears, but the leeway they made was incomparable to the same distance they were able to cover earlier in the day. The whipping gusts grew stronger, throwing sand in their faces and bodies beating at any uncovered skin. The more they advanced, the more difficult it became. Gusts became deafening gales, and whirling sand wrapped the air around them, blinding their path. Xie Lian, holding his bamboo hat down, called out, "This sandstorm doesn't feel right." No one answered him, and Xie Lian looked back, afraid that someone might be lost. But all 3 were present and following him, just no one had heard him. The gales were so strong his voice was swallowed up. He wasn't particularly worried about Nan Feng and Fu Yao, even with crazed winds whipping the two. Walked steadily, full of killing intent. San Lang, on the other hand, followed closely behind Xie Lian, never more than 5 steps away. Even with so much sand blowing and thrashing about, San Lang remained calm and collected, arms folded behind him as he walked. His red tunic and black hair danced wildly in the wind, as if he hadn't any care in the world. Xie Lian could feel how hard the sand was hitting his face, and was worried by how little San Lang seemed to mind. He opened his mouth to tell the youth to watch out for sand getting in his eyes and sleeves, but figured he wouldn't hear anything he'd say, so Xie Lian reached over directly to help fold in his sleeves, patting down to make sure no sand would get in. San Lang was taken aback by the sudden gesture. The other 2 behind him approached, and with everyone closer to a better hearing range, Xie Lian tried talking again. "Be careful, everyone. This wind came out of nowhere, it's not right. There may be evil blown into this. It's just a little sandstorm, how evil can it be?" Fu Yao said. Xie Lian shook his head. "The wind is all right. There may be more than sand in the gusts, though." Just then, a powerful gust whipped by, blowing off Xie Lian's bamboo hat. If it flew off, it would disappear in the desert forever. But San Lang reacted immediately and grabbed the hat in time with an abnormally fast hand. He returned the bamboo hat to Xie Lian once more, and Xie Lian thanked him. He retied the hat onto his head before he said, "We should probably find shelter for the time being."
Fu Yao disagreed. "If there's evil in this storm trying to stop us from advancing, then we must continue."
Before Xie Lian could say anything, San Lang burst out laughing. Fu Yao raised his head and asked coldly, "What are you laughing at?" San Lang folded his arms and chuckled. "Does being subversive give you the satisfaction of feeling unique and independent?" Xie Lian had always thought that it was hard to tell when San Lang's laughs were sincere, but this time there was definitely not a single trace of sincerity. Fu Yao's eyes grew dark, and Xie Lian raised his hand to stop another impending argument. "Stop right there, you two. If you've got things to say, you can say them later. It won't be funny if the wind blows stronger. What? Think it'll blow you away?" Fu Yao mocked. "That may very well ha." Xie Lian didn't finish his sentence before the three in front of him suddenly vanished. Actually, they weren't the one who vanished, but him. Another powerful gust had carried him away for real. A twister. Xie Lian spun madly in the sky. He threw out his arm and cried, "Ruoye!" Grabbed hold of something dependably solid. Ruoye shot out from within Xie Lian's sleeve, and in the next moment, he could feel the other end of the white bandage sink, as if it was tied onto something, and it yanked him to a stop. After finally stabilizing himself in the crazed wind, Xie Lian realized that he had been blown over 10 feet above ground. Xie Lian was now like a kite, attached to the ground by only a single thread. With sand whipping at his face, Xie Lian held fast and tried to see what exactly Ruoye had tied itself to. Squinting and blinking, Xie Lian finally recognized a red silhouette. The other end of Ruoye seemed to be wrapped around the wrist of the youth in red. Xie Lian told Ruoye to grab hold of something dependably solid, and it grabbed onto San Lang. 26 Hongjing means red mirror.